If I go to work today, I'm gonna...
So, as you saw from the intro, the pre-nerf bleed is back in Borderlands 4. Now, to start off, I am aware that people had already made videos about this specific build with the gamer class mod and bleed. The reason I'm making this video is to kind of clarify the more confusing mechanics behind this build, and also to make some adjustments to the skill tree itself. So for our main weapon, we have the Hot Slugger. By itself, it's a phenomenal weapon for mobbing and for bossing and for general use. It has very high base damage, it can stack up its damage, and we also get additional crit damage on top of that. But the main reason we're using the Hot Slugger is because of the passive called Anti-Up. Cash gains increase gun chance and skill damage. The more full his gun's mag and the more fortune stacks he has, the greater the bonus. As you can see, it gives up to 15% on gun damage and up to 20% on skill damage. This damage calculation is completely off, and on screen there's going to be a actual damage calculation for Anti-Up. The way it works is that it calculates the ratio between our gun mag and our fortune stack count, meaning the lower the gun mag in relation to fortune stack count, the higher the bonuses from Anti-Up. And because our Hot Slugger is a one-shot reload weapon with one ammo in the mag, we're able to get insane damage bonuses from Anti-Up specifically because of this damage calculation. The aim for this build is to have insane action skill damage that also dips into bleed, because bleed is considered to be skill damage, and we are also getting insane gun damage and elemental damage. And on top of that, we are also getting more crit damage, and we are getting guaranteed crits on every shot of our Hot Slugger. So starting off, we go 5 into fast hands. We get more reload speed for our one-shot reload weapon, which is really good. And we also get more chance to enter Windfall with our fortune stacks. Again, a lot of our bonuses scale to the max if we have Windfall active, because Windfall makes it so our fortune stacks behave as if they were in their max stacks. So we need to make sure that we always enter Windfall to get the most out of our action skill bonuses. We go 1 point into Alchemy, so we are able to get fortune stacks whenever we apply an elemental effect. Otherwise, we would need to kill enemies in order to get fortune stacks, and it will be very inconvenient and very unsustainable. Then moving down the tree, we go 5 points into Trick Talker. We get more elemental damage the more fortune stacks we have, up to 35%, which dips into the Vigorish, which we're going to discuss later. Next, we have Sounds of Rain, where we spec 2 points into this passive. We're not going to be using it much because we're going to have guaranteed crits anyways from the hot streak. And the reason we are speccing specifically into this is so that we can avoid the go for broke. The main reason we are not using go for broke is because of how hot streak works. The hot streak works basically like a stacking skill. Whenever we gain a stack of fortune, the next gunshot or action skill damage instance is going to automatically crit, and this instance deals increased crit damage. Because Cash has a limited amount of fortune stacks that he can gain before he, for example, goes into Windfall. Because when you are in Windfall, you are able to gain fortune stacks, but you are usually not able to spend them unless you go into the red tree with the Dusty Trail. But in our blue tree, there are really no skills that allow us to actually lose fortune stacks on demand whenever we are already in Windfall. And because Hot Streak counts a stored crit for the instance of gaining the fortune stack and not the actual amount of fortune stacks that you gain per instance, we never go into this. Because theoretically, if we get 3 fortune stacks, we only get 1 stack of hot streak. And with this, we are able to more quickly reach the threshold where we cannot gain any more fortune stacks, which limits our crit count. Moving down the tree, we have Blade Scratch. Because we are able to attempt to enter Windfall whenever we reload or activate our action skill, adding in a stack of fortune every time we are unable to do so whenever we proc an action skill or reload our weapon is going to be very useful for stacking fortune stack. So to kind of demonstrate the mechanic around the hot streak, we're gonna just start stacking our fortune stacks, and when we reload, as you can see, we attempt to go into Windfall. We don't even need to hit any enemies, we just reload and we attempt to enter Windfall, and because of that we gain 1 fortune stack, and because of that we also gain 1 stack of hot streak. And keep in mind that you can have up to 14 max fortune stacks on the setup, which means before going into Windfall, we have a potential of storing 14 guaranteed crits for our gun. So we're just gonna keep stacking. Make sure to not hit the enemy because it consumes the hot streak. So we're just gonna keep stacking and stacking. We have 10 stacks, so we have 8 because we spent a few stacks on accidentally hitting the enemy, but we're just gonna keep shooting until we go into Windfall. We go into Windfall, and as you can see, we still have the hot streak stacks, but we also gained a few fortune stacks because of the alchemy, because our totem had inflicted a status effect. And as you can see, we are able to get even more stored crit. Moving down the tree, we take the Devil's Time, so we have an extra augment for our totems. This is going to be very important later. Moving to the right side of the bottom tree, we have Payout. This is really good for scaling all of our passives that are fortune skills. Then we go into Tender Hearts, so we have even more critical hit damage. And whenever we enter Windfall, we also gain a chance to critically hit with action skills. Again, we are using hot streak for guaranteed crits on our action skills and on our guns, so we really don't need that. We just use this for extra crit damage, which is going to be nice for proccing bleed. And as previously discussed, we have a hot streak where we're able to stack guaranteed crits whenever we gain a stack of fortune. Moving to the middle, we gain Ace in the Hole, where we get gun damage for every stack of fortune, which again is boosted by Payout, which is really good for our hot slugger. Then we go around the corner, where we get more action skill cooldown rate for every stack of fortune, scales again off of the Payout, and is going to dip into the higher roller that we're going to discuss a bit later. Next, we purposely avoid the House Edge, because when you are in Windfall, you have a limited amount of fortune stacks that you can gain, because if you gain a max count of fortune stacks in Windfall, you cannot lose them, so you're just going to have to wait out the duration of the buff. And for that duration, when you expended all of your hot streak stacks, you won't be able to do any crits to enemy. So it is instrumental that we start with 0 fortune stacks when we enter Windfall. Next, we go 5 points into anti-up. This is our main damage scaling skill. So if we just start stacking some fortune stacks and we also enter Windfall, we throw down some totems for buffs. We throw these out. And if we go into our stat sheet, we're going to have 552 skill damage and 364 gun damage. And this can go even further if we have all of our buffs up. And for the last, in the middle section, we have the No Limit, where we get even more max fortune stacks. With 2 out of 5 points, we get only 14 instead of 20. But we sadly don't have enough skill points to fully invest into this passive. Moving to the left side, we have High Roller that scales gun damage based on action skill cooldown, which is increased by around the corner, which is further increased by Payout and the No Limit. Next, we have Vigorish. This one is a very powerful skill that basically allows us to deal elemental damage with our guns if our action skill deals elemental damage to enemies. And this is the reason why we had to spec 5 points into the green skill tree, so we can move down and take 5 as alive, where we get a lightning rod totem. So in the firing range, as you can see, we managed to spawn a lightning rod totem, and because of that, our gun also gains additional shock damage, and because our gun hits for very large chunks of damage, we're able to get a large bonus from the Vigorish. Not to mention that Vigorish is a fortune skill that scales off of our no limit and off of the payout. For the last point, we go into Dealer's Bluff. Whenever we gain a stack of fortune, we restore action skill cooldown. This will allow us to basically throw out these totems constantly, which is going to give us a lot of bonuses and a lot of chances to proc the elemental totems for the Vigorish. For the last 5 points, we go into Charm Bracelet. We not only use this to move down the tree to take 5 as alive and Heavenly Sevens, but also because for every totem summoned, we gain increased skill damage, which dips into our bleed. Now for our specializations, we go 20 points into Brute so we can get Riddle You This, and then we go 20 points into Daredevil so we can get both I Am a Gun and an Owned Mind. Once again, we take both of these because our bleed benefits from skill damage, and this will be a major chunk of our DPS. Particularly with Owned Mind, it boosts our bleed immensely because of how it works. Basically, on the release of Borderlands 4, with Vex, you had Bloodletter skill, which allowed us to proc bleed with a 50% chance whenever we deal crits with our skills or guns. And this bleed scaled off of the crit damage dealt. The main thing was that bleed could proc itself. So for example, you throw a vivisecting knife and then you shoot with a high crit weapon like a hot slugger or a ballista, and then it starts the bleed chain, where because the bleed is guaranteed to crit on the enemy because the enemy has a vivisecting knife debuff, the bleed basically starts to stack itself exponentially, and eventually you just break the integer limit of Borderlands 4. They obviously did nerf it like a month later, but when they released Cache and they added the gamer class mod, they kind of forgot to put this limit, and because of that, Cache is able to crit with bleed, and these crits also scale bleed even further. So to kind of show you off the bleed stacking, we put down some totems for additional skill damage. We're gonna throw these ones down. We're gonna pop an amp rep kit to get the first big shot. We're gonna put the knife onto the enemy, and we're gonna crit the enemy, and now we just watch the damage scale further and further and further. So if we throw down some more crit knives, we're able to boost the crit chance with our bleed, and it's going to quickly go into billions if we scale far enough. For our firmware, we're going to go 3 points into Deadeye so we can get even more crit damage. That's going to give us stronger bleed procs, and we go 2 points into Action Fist so we're able to boost our action skill damage, which benefits both our totems that are going to deal a significant chunk of the damage to the enemy because of our anti-up, and also into bleed because it counts as skill damage. For the rest of the gear, we have Amp and Rage Rep Kit, which basically boosts our damage on the first hit. This one is really useful for bossing specifically. Then we go into Vivisecting Throwing Knife. This one is very important for bossing so we can scale up the bleed damage. Next, the most important part of the class mod, we have the Gamer class mod. We were lucky enough to get points into both Trick Shot that gives us bone charts on Ricochet, and also into Accursed Bones, so we are able to jinx enemies whenever we deal skill damage. The main benefit of this class mod is once again the bleed that it provides us. Whenever we critically hit with the enemy, we cause the bleed, so it's not a chance-based ability like on Bloodletter from Vex. This is a guaranteed bleed proc if we crit the enemy, and whenever we kill the enemy with the bleed, we spawn a Chaos Totem, which is a pretty nice addition, but it's not necessary for the build. For our shield, we have What's for Dinner. This just gives us bonus shock damage and also amp damage on our first shot. Sadly, in this build, we are not able to sustain our overshield because we are not able to go into Turn of Fate. But even without the overshield sustain, we really don't need extra damage because the majority of the damage, especially for bossing, comes from bleed itself and not on first shot damage. And for our enhancements, we use a Jacob's enhancement for mobbing and for critical hit damage stacking for our hot slugger. So this is kind of how we perform in mobbing. So we throw down some totems. We eventually gonna block our Windfall. We enter Windfall and we start dealing insane bleed damage, and we are also just one-shotting enemies, especially because we have both of the fire and shock totems in place, so we are able to get both ticks of Vigorish from shock and fire. As you can see, we are doing a lot of crit damage, and this insane crit damage also allows us to proc very strong bleeds on bosses. Now, the main problem with this build is that it really doesn't deal well with crystal enemies, so we're gonna have to rely on totems to kind of squish them down and eventually break the crystals. And you're gonna have to be really precise with Hostlager so you can break those off. But if you do end up breaking these off, you can just melt the... Where's the enemy? There he is. You can just one-shot the ordinary enemies. So we're gonna test the damage against Radix. We're gonna throw a few totems. We're gonna start attempting to enter Windfall. We're gonna throw some more totems down. We're gonna pop the rep kit. We're gonna put the knife onto the boss, and we're just gonna do our shot. And as you can see, we are taking insane amounts of bleed damage. Miguel, the boss is almost... Yep, boss is dead. This would have went even more smoothly if we are able to stack 3 of the vivisection knives on the boss, but sadly he was just like thrashing us around, so we really did not have the opportunity to do so. That's gonna be it for the build. Thank you for watching and have a good one.